right. Welcome to the 2014 workshop on CHAMP++ and its applications. It's the 12th workshop, I'm proud to say. We've been running this since 2001 or something, and in case you're wondering, we shifted from spring to fall, rather fall to spring 1 year. So that accounts for the 1 year offset there. We have an exciting program. I'm going to give you a very brief introduction and to the workshop and to maybe our group and to CHAMP++. And then we go from there. Mostly this introduction is a ritual because many of you know this already, know CHAMP++ already, but there are a few new faces, and I also have some nice, some newer results that won't be shown in the workshop to talk about. So CHAMP++ began as an adaptive runtime system for dealing with what? Dealing with application variability. So right in the early days, we were doing state space search, which of course are completely dynamic and unpredictable. There are tree applications, but every node of the tree may either lead to a huge subtree or may die right there. And so you get quite a bit of dynamic variability through that. Is the microphone working? Okay. So, then we switched to scientific applications in mid-90s. Actually, early 90s, there was one CFD work we did, but then mid-90s, we did many other scientific applications. NAMD was NAMD was the most prominent one in retrospect at that, and so that was designed around 96 time frame. So this attention to variability and how to deal with variability through adaptivity turns out to be useful for future hardware as well. Whether it's exascale or not, the future hardware is characterized by variability of various sorts, and so it's going to be even more relevant in future. So I'm going to recap some of the points I made at Solution last week. So I think the Robert Wisniewski is the person who should get to his email now because he heard most of this earlier. But other than that, I think no one was there. So if you look at exascale now, well, the challenge is also variability. There is a static variability between, among heterogeneous processors, or maybe process variation within a chip. Or across chips. There is dynamic variability as power and temperature goes up and down. There is component failures and a variety of things like that. And this is exacerbated by the fact that we need strong scaling. That is to say, as we go in future, it is not enough to say, well, I'll solve a larger problem on a larger computer. In many applications, as we'll see, we need to solve the same problem faster now. The need for just occupying more memory so that we can do bigger models is now, by now, for many applications, saturated. I'll show you one example of those and what we mean by strong scaling. So, and again, what we seek is not full automation, like where the programmer doesn't have to do anything, maybe bring their dusty deck old code, or write some simple-minded program, but at the same time, and then the system will do the rest. Nor are we trying to full burden on application developers. We want to take on some burden away from them, in a sense, developing a good partnership between the system and the application developer. So to do this, what is the technique? What are we going to, all this non-constancy everywhere, things are changing, impermanence. So we need some mantra. So my mantra for this is, and I won't repeat in this talk, this is much too short, but the mantra for this is this. Not that one. Not that one. In particular, it has a additional letter that needs to go somewhere, maybe at the end, the beginning, maybe it doesn't matter, because that A stands for asynchrony in any order, right? So asynchrony is one principle, migratability is the other principle, over-decomposition is the main driver for this. So over-decompose the computation, execute it asynchronously, allow the work and data units to migrate across processors. That's the principle. Those are the principles behind most of the stuff that we do in CHAMP++ and at PPL. So just a little bit about each idea. You decompose the work units and the data units of the computation that you want to parallelize, which you do anyways, even for normal MPI programming, but you over-decompose them. We just kind of overdo that a little bit so that you have more pieces than there are execution units. The execution units can be cores or nodes. Think of mapping stuff to cores or nodes, and that's an option. If you do it, map it to nodes, then inside you can use either OpenMP or you can use one of Charm's own within node abstractions. The second idea is migratability. These work units and data units should be allowed to go to any processor during the execution of the program, which actually has a couple of consequences. One, for the app developer, it means the communication should not be addressed to processors, but it should be addressed to these logical units. That's actually a positive consequence, right? I mean, I don't see anything negative about it from the application writer's point of view, so you address the logical units. But for the system, the consequence is that it must keep track of where these units are, and so it needs to do location management, okay? Now, there are lots of things happening on a given processor. What order should they execute? You know, if you look at some of the AMR codes, they actually use over-decomposition. None of these principles are just exclusive to Charm++. So over-decomposition in particular is used in AMR codes. Now, these AMR codes oftentimes, though, will explicitly orchestrate what is going on each processor. So it is possible to do over-decomposition and not asynchrony, but what we advocate is to use a model where the system decides, and not the programmer, what action takes place on every processor next. The system will pick one of the ready objects, ready entities, and in any order, except the programmer might have some control over what executes next, based on, say, things like priorities. So the picture looks like this. You have a bunch of processors, only two shown here. A processor here could be a core or a node. Let's leave that ambiguous for now. Or imagine core if you want concreteness. And on each core, there are many objects. They may be, in Charm++, they're actually C++ objects, but they can be any other work units. And then an object A up here, with the orange object on the left, wants to invoke a method, in our case, on the other brown object on the other side. And so, but it logically just says, hey, invoke this method on that object. Internally, the system says, oh, that object, the 17th member of A, that I know lives on that processor by its location management infrastructure. And so it sends that message over there. It waits in the queue there for a while. Depending on when its turn comes, then the scheduler will pick that and deliver it to that object where it executes and does what it's supposed to do. When the process on the left executed the call, it did not expect any return value, so the calls in Charm++ are asynchronous method invocations. If you want something back, you'll have to get another method invocation from them in the base model. So these three principles, asynchrony, over-decomposition, and migratability, when they are combined with introspection and adaptivity, so the system is observing what's going on, and it has an opportunity to do so based on the picture that you saw last. It's in charge of scheduling, it's in charge of location, it's in charge of delivering messages. And so it can see what is going on in the program, and then it can adapt, and the adaptivity has also lots of possibilities because it can migrate objects around and do several other things, including sequencing things. So introspection and adaptivity together, when they're added, well, you get an adaptive runtime system. So it can do things like dynamically balance load, optimize communication, automatic latency tolerance, and you can read about that elsewhere if it's not obvious. And prefetch with almost perfect predictability, which is something that's very useful for future architectures when memory or hierarchies need to be more explicitly controlled. The fact that there is a scheduler's queue and we know what objects data this method is going to access allows us to do prefetch as well in advance and much more accurately, predictably than, say, the cache systems of today do. So just a couple of examples to illustrate a couple of these points. NAMD, as you know, and this is somewhat dated, maybe with 50,000 plus registered users now, and it has been scaled to most top US supercomputers. A recent success for NAMD was a determination of the HIV capsid structure that's shown there. That was done by Professor Schulten, who is the leader for the biophysics group here. And Jim Phillips, who's sitting there, is the lead developer of NAMD. And so it was developed collaboratively between us, between PPL and Klaus Schulten's group. And it's a collaboration, probably one of the longest lasting one. I don't know, 92 was the first NIH Center for Biomolecular Modeling. We got our 5-year renewal a couple of years ago, so it will continue for 25 years. So anyway, so the interesting thing I want to show you here is one of the recent results. This is on IBM PERC system. I hope somebody doesn't mind me showing a little peek at a snapshot of work in progress here. This is molecular dynamics, a very small benchmark by today's standards, 92,000 atom system running on about 500 nodes, which is 16K cores. So there are about 6 atoms per core here, right? If you actually talk about the ratio. And you can see the time per step is about 250 microsecond. If you actually, projections normally, the performance instrumentation normally doesn't have much overhead. But at this scale, it does add some overhead. So it's like 230 microsecond per time step. 2 milliseconds, about 8 steps going on there. And so that's one of the, I think, the smallest time steps of any application that I have seen. And this indicates the need for strong scaling that's going on in our applications, future applications. Biophysics is about biomolecules. And a biomolecule is what size it is. You cannot simulate it with high resolution. You're doing one atomic level simulation anyways. And so, oh, well, you can study larger and larger molecules, but that goes to a few million atoms. And you could do 100 million atom simulation, like the virus code was 64 million atoms. But that's pretty much kind of the spectrum from 100,000 atoms to maybe 100 million atoms is the spectrum. This is just showing another projections snapshot of that, and showing the time step, probably unimportant right now. So the point is, I think I already made this point speaking earlier, is that strong scaling is the need of the hour for many applications. To pick another point from another application, or maybe skip it, is AMR. And we did have a talk last year about this. We have a 3D version of this now, which is a structured, which is a octree-based AMR code. And it's characterized in its CHAM++ implementation is characterized by, okay, movie is not going to come up, is characterized by a highly asynchronous algorithm and a distributed load balancing scheme. So the basic idea is, skipping all that, the basic idea is you have a state machine at every chunk of the AMR tree. It just keeps track of messages coming from the neighbor saying, hey, I'm refining, hey, I'm coarsening. And your own messages asynchronously also saying, hey, I need to coarsen, or my errors are such that I need to refine. And then it basically converges to one of the 3 decisions, stay, coarsen, or refine. And without doing any series of reductions except one quiescence detection and a step. And so with that, we get a highly asynchronous algorithm for remeshing of this. Combined with good load balancing, we're getting pretty good speed ups on this octree-based AMR mini app. The exascale issues, well, exascale issues were not addressed in what I showed so far. These are just application variability. It turns out the same adaptivity that we use for application variation also is useful for exascale issues or future issues, which include things such as fault tolerance and fault tolerance and say energy-related things. We have 4 fault tolerance schemes available in CHAM++. Actually, the in-memory double checkpoint with automatic restart is the production version that's been distributed with CHAM++ for years. It went through some really nice improvements over the last year using non-volatile memory, for example, the NVRAMs or flash memories, etc. And so, so it's now a very nice, very efficient system, fully automatic on as long as the machine permits a job. Machine doesn't kill the job if a node fails. So as long as that's the case, then we can recover from a failure, stop failure automatically. Just brief summary of energy work, since there is only there's probably a talk about the communication links in this year, but there is a lot of work in the group about saving energy or optimizing power. The earliest work on that was on saving cooling energy. And I think I won't go through that, but basically we use temperature sensing combined with DVFS at that time. RAPL would be the thing now, so to reduce the frequency of the hard chips, and then to load balance things because those slowed down processors create load imbalances. But there are several new power-related strategies that are coming up, and I think you'll hear about some of them today. My last minute, so I will skip past these. That's the structure of our runtime system. We are a participant in Argo now, trying to take some of the lessons we learned in CHARM++ into a prototype for a future that's being built in collaboration with many others. Now coming back to the workshop, so that's enough for my introduction to CHARM. In the workshop we have, right after me, Robert Harrison is going to talk about madness and other things on computational chemistry issues. Vivek Sarkar will open tomorrow's session. We have Robert Wisniewski going to talk about exascale roadmap and some other related issues maybe. Brian Van Stralen is going to talk about, I don't know exactly what, but something to do with AMR, I think. And then there have talks by 5 of our major applications. Here's some given by, well, all given by collaborators. The MITRE talk will be Akhil. We have newer collaborations, the class simulation with Disney, and Rasmus will give that talk. We have a brand new collaboration on with Chris Carruthers on ROS, and Chris will give that talk. We have a few talks on enhancements to the runtime that we have added over the last year or so. We have several external talks from the group. And then there's a panel on the HPC in the cloud. How much water does it hold? We continue the tradition of catchy, no tacky, no what titles that we keep doing every year. So how much water does it hold? We'll find out tomorrow. In the meanwhile, I must tell you, somehow there is blue skies now. There will likely be more rain here in the next couple of days. The temperature has been up and down, and so now it's in the more down range. As a workshop host, let me tell you some of these down-to-earth things. There is a restroom at the other end of this